And we are live. Welcome to the podcast.
Bam.
This is Big Reptile Talk, and we got Big Jeremy in the building, man. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How about you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Now I wanted to talk to you a little bit, learn a little bit about you, man.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about Brassman Reptiles, man. Tell me about it.
So Brassman Reptiles started kind of randomly. So I started keeping reptiles when I was 8 years old. And I built up a pretty large collection. And I had a business when I was in high school. It was called J&D Reptiles. And I was breeding reptiles full time. Through high school, from the time I was a freshman all the way into my freshman year of college. And when I moved away for college, I put somebody in charge of kind of maintaining everything. And I was going to be back every other weekend, do pairings and stuff to kind of keep things chugging along. And before I had left, that person and I had discussed them maybe investing a little bit in my business, whatever. And I was like, okay, I'll draw up some contracts, we'll work it out. And that person became pretty impatient and got some snakes in without me knowing and never quarantined them, and basically destroyed my entire collection that I built up from, age 8 to 14. And cost me everything, like literally everything. So I kind of went underground for a little bit. I reduced the size of my collection to kind of just a few things that I just had for a long time that were pets, And in 2016, it was 2016 or 2017, I was kind of building another collection. I had gotten a teaching gig when I moved back home from college, so I was making a little money. Felt like I could make some investments, and I happened to be at Tinley with a couple of friends, and at the auction, the US Arc auction, I was bidding on this carpet python, and I won it. And Phil Goss was doing the auction, Phil from US Arc, and I've known Phil for a few years. So he said, "Sold, thank you, Brassman," because he knows I play trumpet. That was what I went to school for, was music. And it just kind of stuck after that. So Brassman Reptiles is kind of the resurgence of what I used to be doing with my other company that I needed a fresh start from, pretty much.
I can understand that. I can understand that. With your company,
Mm.
Ozzy Boys primarily focuses on like ball pythons and boas. With your breeding company, what's the snakes that you primarily want to focus on getting bred?
So I have 4 primary species. I've got ball pythons, which have been a staple for mine forever, like so many others. Carpet pythons, blood and short tail pythons. I pretty much lump them in together. And then Amazon tree boas. And those are 4 species for me that I've had long-standing relationships with at one point or another. Now, I will say I have probably like 16 different species in my personal collection that I keep and breed, but most of the stuff is like a pair here or a trio of this. But those 4 species are the ones that I'm like all in on,
Right.
like 60 ball pythons, 25 carpet pythons, like a whole bunch of stuff like that.
Jesus, man, I love that you breed those 4 species, because I actually got 2 of them. I own a carpet
Okay.
python and an Amazon tree boa.
Heck yeah,
Two of
man.
my favorites, man. I love them.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, I got to talk about Nerd. Now, I want to
Of
know,
course.
you the big you the manager at Nerd. Tell me, what's it like in a day like at Nerd? Give me the rundown in a day at Nerd. Tell me what's it
Well,
like.
it's totally random. So I manage pretty much everything that's going on upstairs. So a lot of what I do actually is not necessarily animal based. I'm going through, checking in on staff, making sure stuff is up to par, making sure stuff gets posted on the website for sale. Go stuff on Morph Market and whatever. Today we're short staffed because our other guy Rob is out field herping in South Utah for the next few days. So I was down a person. So my day today was literally spent in the rodent room cleaning mice. So
I had to do the grunt work for a little bit.
That's it, man. But I love it, man. Regardless of what's going on, it's a crazy experience. So like I met Kevin when I was really young, when I was in my early teens, and I've gotten to know him very, very well over the years. And he's the one that offered me the job. There was no like, oh, Nerd's hiring, let me see what I can do. It was like he and I were talking one day, and he was like, you looking for work? Because I could use some help. And I was like, what? Because I wasn't expecting that, man. And yeah, so it'd be 2 years. I've been here for about 2 years now, and man, it's crazy. It really is. It's ridiculous. There's still days when I don't even really believe that I work where I work. Nerd has meant so. I tell people that Nerd was like my college for reptiles. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to learn from anybody better, really, when it comes to so many different species, from ball python genetics to breeding reticulated pythons, and so many other species of reptile that he's worked with over the last 3 decades. It's crazy.
I bet. I mean, as soon as he comes in the shop, I bet it's just crazy and it's fun and it's exciting.
Yeah, and he also, I tell people like this too, like the hardest part of my job is working with Kevin because he's all over the place. He's never thinking about one thing. He's like, oh, we got to do this, then we got to do this, and then don't forget about this. This has to happen, and blah blah blah. So he's always got something going on, and trying to manage that, man, that in and of itself is a full-time job. Like,
Now, with you being at the shop, tell me,
Mm.
is there anything that you won't touch at the shop? You just like, oh no, that thing, the bite is insane. I'm not touching it.
Not really. I mean, the only stuff at the shop that I can't even say I'm nervous around. I'm just extra vigilant around. Is stuff like the croc monitors. I mean, crocodile monitors are one hell of an impressive animal, man, and it takes a lot of work to get them to a point where you can really trust them and have a solid relationship with them. And some of the bigger ones that we have, they were wild caught or captive hatched, so they don't really have a good relationship with people. So when you've got to go in a cage with a 7-foot crocodile monitor, you're watching everything around you. Most of the time they're running away. They're like, don't touch me, please, just leave me alone. But you get too close and they let you know, even if it's just getting whipped by the tail, man, it's not a fun time whatsoever. But I'll work with it all, man. Venomous snakes, monitors, crocodilians, doesn't matter to me, man.
Man, talking to you, I'm mad, man. I want to quit my job and I'm jealous. Tomorrow, I'm gonna mess around and quit my job because I want to work at Nerd with you. I'm quitting. This is it. I'm going to work at Nerd. I'm quitting. I'm jealous, man. Now, tell me, what's your favorite animal at the shop right now?
Oh, dude, that's the most loaded question ever. Dude, it's hard, man. Man, it's really hard. I have to say, just from a keeper's perspective, not even talking about breeding or anything like that. The water monitors, man, got to be one of my favorite things, dude. Just because it's not like it's a crazy animal. It's pretty easy to get your hands on a water monitor, but to work with an animal that genuinely wants to be pet, that wants attention from you, that for a reptile, that's insane. Like, it really is insane. You think about, we work with ball pythons and retics and whatever, and these things, they're chill, but that retic isn't coming out of the cage like, please pet me, I love you. This water monitor, you open up the cage, it's like, hey buddy, what's going on? And it wants to just like, it wants to come out, it wants to investigate all over you, it wants to smell you, it wants to do whatever, and it's going to come over you and wait for you to pet it. That's amazing. It's freaking amazing. So I think for that reason alone, working with the water monitors they're probably my favorite animal in general.
Man, you got the best job in the world, man. I'm jealous. I am jealous. I got a question from the audience, man. He wants to know, how many hybrid projects do y'all have going on this year?
We actually don't have too many hybrid projects happening. Last year, Kevin tried some really crazy hybrids that some of them we showcased on YouTube, some of them we didn't. But the biggest thing that we're trying to do this year is we're breeding sunglow boas, so a hypo albino boa, to green anacondas. So we're doing the boa conda hybrids, which I don't think there's been any recently done in a few years. But the ones that were done, it was just like a normal boa to an anaconda, and it made like just a stripy looking hybrid. It was interesting, but nobody's plugged a morph into the mix. So obviously, we're not going to see what the albino necessarily does right away. But with the hypo, we'll see what that might translate into with these hybrids. So that'll be interesting. But as far as crazy hybrid stuff, we didn't do anything super crazy.
Okay. I love that answer. Now, being at the shop,
Mm-hmm.
now, you know what? I'm gonna switch how I ask this.
Okay.
Now, everybody has seen that video of that gentleman, and he's opening up a cage, and that big white snake comes out and strikes him in the chest.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that to lead into the question of what's the meanest, like the worst bite you ever took at the shop? You personally.
Me personally, amazingly, and I'm not saying this to brag, but I typically don't get bit by much. If I get bit by anything, it's usually baby ball pythons. Like, because we have so many of them, nobody's sitting there playing with ball pythons all day. So we're opening drawers to clean stuff, and people are like, or the snakes are like, leave me alone, so we get bit by baby ball pythons more than anything else. But overall worst injury at the shop is, again, it's going to the water monitors, dude. Those nails, you get those things like climbing on you. If you don't trim those nails, man, you are getting cut up. You look like somebody sliced right through a steak, man. It's no fun at all. So yeah, those are probably the worst injuries. You ask anybody that works with the monitors what the worst part of the monitors is, it's either the poopy water or it's getting scratched up all over the place.
Now, with Kevin's Cobra, I want to say it's like Lucille. I can't remember her name.
Oh, Lilith. Yeah.
But how is it with you? Do you get a chance to hold her, handle her? And if you do get a chance to handle her, what's going through your mind?
So nobody really handles Lilith at all. Ever. So here in New Hampshire, we're the only place in the state that is permitted to own venomous reptiles. And the permit is totally conditional. So if your name's not on the permit, you're not touching the venomous reptiles.
I see.
So my name's not on the permit. But so Kevin, our venomous guy, Timmy, and then Rob, the three of those guys are on the permit. So I'll get brought in if they need an extra set of hands, do something. But typically, unless it's like they absolutely need help, I don't necessarily mess with any of the venomous stuff over there. Just so that, God forbid, anything was to happen, we don't get screwed. Because if somebody got bit that wasn't on the permit, the state would then have every right to be like, your permit is removed. You can no longer keep these animals. So for that reason, we don't really have anybody mess with any of the venomous stuff unless absolutely necessary.
That makes sense. So it's just a couple people in the shop that can handle her, and after that, you just more of like, let me go in and look at her. She
Exactly.
See you tomorrow. Look. You use two fingers. This is how you do it. You look at her and then you say, "Peace. It was fun seeing you. Hey, I see you. Peace."
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. Speaking of venomous reptiles, a good friend of mine, Joe Chandler, he's the owner of Venom Proof Cages. So if anybody's watching, nerd, anybody, y'all need to check him out, man. He has some amazing cages. They actually have like little boxes in there to where the snake can go in and you can actually safely go in and change it.
Oh yeah, the lock boxes.
Yeah, it's inside. So he makes Venom Proof Cages, man. Y'all definitely need to check him out. He's definitely a good guy. Big Joe's in the chat, man. We love you, brother. Now, I asked you to come on my show, and you was like, "I'm in Detroit right now," and I didn't think nothing of it. And then I looked at your story. I said, "Oh, he hanging out with Brian Barczyk. That's why he's in Detroit." Tell me how it was hanging out with Double B, man.
Man, Brian's wonderful. So originally I was supposed to be in Detroit for some music work. I had some studio session work lined up, and stuff got all messed up between the artist and the studio, so nothing ended up happening. So Brian kind of saved me and hooked me up because I was just about to be in Detroit with nothing to do, and I told him I was going to come visit for a day or two, but next thing I know, I got 6 days of nothing. So I went and hung out with him for a few days, for almost a week. But Brian's great, man. So I first met Brian in 2009 at White Plains, New York Reptile Show. I was 15 or 16 years old, and he was the only person in the industry that I've ever been any kind of starstruck with, because at that age, at that time, everybody was watching Snake Bites TV. The old school Snake Bites TV. Every Wednesday, it was like, there's a new episode of Snake Bites. I can't wait to see, what happens. And so I got to meet him, and man, he didn't know me from a hole in the wall. And he talked to me for like 2 hours at the show, just about everything, man. He asked me what I kept and what I was breeding and blah, blah, blah. And we just hit it off, man. And then in 2011, I would see him at shows in between that time and 2011. But in 2011, when I graduated high school, my mom surprised me by setting up a week going to Barczyk's place. I was losing my mind, because I'm like, oh my God, it's Brian Barczyk. Like, I'm so excited to go hang with Brian Barczyk. And this was before he had the Reptarium. This is when he had his massive warehouse where he had one of the largest collections of reptiles in the world, like tens of thousands of snakes, and that, I tell people all the time, like, that moment was pivotal for me, because up until that point, I wanted to be a big reptile breeder. I wanted to have the massive building with the thousands of snakes and blah, blah, blah. And getting to be at BHB when it was at that level, seeing the day in, day out grind, and then realizing, like, man, not only are you responsible for these animals, for being able to pay your bills, keep the lights on, blah, 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 you got to now be responsible for the paychecks of all these other people. I didn't want that. So that was like a reality check for me for what I wanted out of the industry. And it was not a negative thing on Brian at all. If anything, it was a super positive learning experience for me. So, but man, like, we went to the movies and like all this other stuff, like, just crazy. We just hanging out, So fast forward to now, hanging out with Brian is like, it's just going to hang out with an old friend, man. Like, he's just awesome. He's always got stuff going on. He's always forward thinking. I love what he's doing with the Reptarium, and he's really pursuing his passion as far as like educating and getting people to love reptiles and enjoy reptiles. And man, he is one of the hardest working people in this industry, man, hands down.
Right. Now, before we go to the next question, I'm gonna tell you, I'm jealous, man. But I ain't got Brian Barczyk yet, but I was able to get his son to come on the show. So I have an interview with Big Noah, man. But I actually talked to him, and he said he's gonna do my show soon. So we'll see.
All right.
And then Noah said he's not him, but Noah said he's gonna do it. So that's something that I'm definitely working towards now.
Heck yeah.
With us talking about Brian Barczyk, who are some of your favorites in the hobby right now? Like, who motivates you to be the best that you can be?
Oh man, that's a good question, man. I mean, it's hard not to be motivated being at Nerd. Kevin's always been an inspiration to me, but seeing his work ethic day in and day out, like there's no stopping, that's a constant inspiration, 100%. But when it comes to just in general, like who am I watching that's crushing it, man? There's probably two aspects when I look at that. There's one, like, obviously guys like Justin Kabelka and Ozzy that are really just, they've honed in on projects that they really are into, and they're crushing it. They really are just crushing it. And I love that. JD Constriction is another one with all that axanthic stuff. I remember when he first started, doing those axanthic combos, we were like, what's he going to do with axanthic? It's just going to be a silver and black snake. It's not going to be that great. And now he produces these ridiculous silver and black and white and black snakes. And we're all like, dude, what the heck, man? Like, nobody thought that was possible. So for me, I absolutely love that. But one of the other things that's motivating is seeing the industry grow and seeing people that are producing their first clutches or getting their first babies, because that excitement and that passion of being able to successfully achieve that, man, how can you not get fired up by that? By that amount of energy and excitement. You say you saw me at Barczyk's place. I brought Lucas with me, Cobra Keeper Jr., and he's like the prime example of that. He's never bred anything before. He keeps a bunch of different stuff, but he's never bred anything before. And the first thing he breeds is green tree pythons, and it goes off without a hitch. Gets copulation, female gets gravid, 10 perfect fertile eggs, 10 perfect offspring. From a 16-year-old who's never bred a damn thing in his life, and is now like, oh my God, I did it. Like that is the stuff for me that keeps me seriously motivated and into it, man. I think part of that is maybe my teaching background, like watching a student achieve something that they are like really trying to do, and they finally do it in that level of excitement. Like there's nothing that beats that, dude.
Right. Now I agree with you. Now we're gonna jump into the next question, and I hope Miguel don't kill me, but I always tell this story because I think it's hilarious. I asked him, with you being as popular as you are and as known as you are, give me a crazy fan story. And he told me a story about he was at a reptile expo, and a fan walked up to him, was a gentleman. He's like, "Hey, I'm a big fan. After this expo, let's go, kill a couple beers." And Miguel's like, "Hey, I'm down. Let's do it."
Yeah.
So they go and they knock a couple beers back. And then afterwards, the guy says to Miguel, like, if you want, we can go up to the room. And Miguel was like, whoa, this ain't that kind of party. and I tell this story to lead into that question of saying, with you being that nerd and y'all being so popular, give me a crazy fan story. Is there anybody just couple girls ran in the store, threw their panties at your head? give me a crazy fan story.
Oh man, there are definitely a few. I'm trying to think about one in particular. Kevin gets a lot of promiscuous DMs. Let's say that. I don't know if it's still been happening, but there was a while. So like Kevin never checks his DMs, like ever. If anybody checks his DMs, it's usually Donnie. And when Donnie first started doing that, he was like, Kevin, you haven't answered like any messages. Like you have all these people just like waiting for a response from you. And he's like, well, I don't have time for that, blah, blah, blah. And dude, he was like, there are some ladies in these DMs that are basically like, you can have it all. And I'm like, oh boy. So I usually joke around with him and be like, it's just the ponytail, bro. That's all it is. It's because you got the ponytail,
You silly, dude. You're silly. So he got women in the DMs ready to risk it all.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Silly. Now, while we're on the subject of podcasts, tell me a little bit about yours, man, because I know you have your own podcast. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So the Reptile Talk podcast. So it's a podcast that I actually started like almost 8 years ago with my friend Steve Tillis down in Florida. And at the time, Steve and I were teenagers, and he had started working with Eugene Bissett, who's one of the godfathers of modern day herpetoculture. And I knew Kevin really well and Brian really well at the time. So we were like, hey, man, for a couple of kids, we know some people, like it would probably be worth our time, interviewing these people and getting some content out there with these guys. So we started doing it, and we were like, yeah, this is going great. This is going great. And then we both went into college, and we're like, oh crap, we don't have time for this anymore. So, so it pretty much like kind of fizzled out. And then when I got up to Nerd, not to say that I had more free time, but I started to reconnect with a bunch of people and was like, man, podcasting seems to be getting kind of popular. I think it'd be dope to bring back the Reptile Talk podcast. So I reached out to Steve, and Steve is still in college working on his PhD right now. Meanwhile, I was a music college dropout. So, so whatever. But Steve was like, I can't do it. I just don't have the time. And I was like, no worries. Like, I really do want to do it. Do you mind if I ask somebody else to co-host it? And he was like, no, man, do what you got to do. He's like, I'd be happy to come on as a guest, when I have the time. And I was like, perfect. So I went right over to Rob and was like, dude, I want to relaunch this podcast and I need a co-host. And he was like, yeah, man, let's do it. And when we started it, the most important thing for us was we didn't want to be a podcast that was going to interview breeders and be like, well, how do you breed a carpet python? How do you breed a ball python? There's more than enough of that content out there. It's 2021. Google is a wonderful tool. There's plenty of YouTube videos on so much of this stuff. But what we did want to do is we wanted to interview keepers and breeders, and we just wanted to talk. Like, what got you into reptiles? What's one of the craziest things that's ever happened to you while keeping reptiles? Like some of these stories.
I'm gonna steal that question.
Yeah, like just it's because it's real, man. Like, we've talked with a lot of great people, and I think the stories, especially for me personally, like being in such close contact with guys like Kevin and Brian, I feel like a lot of the times where I learned the most was just talking with them. It wasn't like, please show me how you make the craziest ball python combos in the world. It was like, no, man, like, what was it like breeding ball pythons in the 90s? When there were no rack systems, when there was no this or there was no that, and then you never know where that story is going to lead, and suddenly you're going to learn something you didn't expect. Those are some of the best moments, and between the people that Rob and I knew in our, almost 40 years combined in the industry, we were like, we got to be able to get some cool stories out of some people, from all different walks of the keeper's life, from just the person who's got a cool collection, the person that breeds a bunch of stuff, the person that does wildlife confiscation, with like Department of Agriculture, is like everything. We want to talk to everybody, because the one thing that keeps us all connected, man, is reptiles.
Right.
So, why not sit down and shoot the shit?
Right. Now, with you being the manager at Nerd, talk to me about COVID. How has COVID affected Nerd, like right now?
So amazingly, New Hampshire was one of the least hit states as far as COVID goes, which we're incredibly thankful for. And Nerd the facility itself is not open to the public. So it's a by appointment only kind of thing if you want to come by. So it didn't really affect us all that much. The biggest thing it affected for Nerd in particular was every weekend we were doing public tours. So every Saturday and Sunday, you'd show up. I'm here for the tour. It's at 4 p.m. You pay however much, and we bring everybody upstairs and we do just kind of like a general tour of the facility. These are reticulated pythons, these are water monitors, these are ball pythons, blah blah blah, a bunch of the stuff we work with. We had to stop that just because, like, the shows we were doing right before COVID, we had like over 100 people in the facility for some of these tours, and Nerd is not set up right for that many people. It's right. Because it's basically one long hallway with a bunch of rooms that jet off to each side. So it's really difficult to fit that many people at Nerd in general. And then you try to deal with social distancing and blah, blah, blah. That doesn't work. So we just stopped doing the public tours. Um, our pet store, so Nerd is 2 stories. The building is 2 stories. So the second story is where Nerd is. That's the breeding facility. The first floor is our retail pet store, Zoo Creatures. And again, luckily, because New Hampshire wasn't massively affected by COVID, we were able to keep the doors open. We limited access into certain rooms. Like we've got 2 rooms of reptiles that are available, so we stopped allowing the public into there. We were doing a lot of like curbside pickup, so people call in and say, "Hey, I need to pick up, 10 feeder mice, whatever." You pay for it over the phone. We'll bring it right out to your car, and then you go on your way. So we luckily were able to maintain pretty well. We had a short period of time where stuff got rough. I think during the one really big wave that we had come through our county in New Hampshire, things got a little rough, but we were able to maintain. And like I said, luckily, because Nerd is already not open to the public, most of our sales are online sales or over the phone sales. We weren't really affected that much at all. So very, very grateful for that, because I know that's not the case for a lot of other people in the industry.
Right. Now, as we jump into the next question, before I ask it,
Yeah.
I hope that Kevin's watching, because this is a question for you, and you got to answer truthfully.
Oh boy.
Now with you being that nerd and soaking up so much knowledge for one of the biggest in the game, have you ever thought about opening up your own shop?
Yes, I'm taking over. I'm going to take over the world. No, man. I have my own collection. I have about 175 of my own animals, from different species and stuff. And many of them Kevin's helped me get, just from connections he's had. And I don't think I've ever wanted to open up a shop. Personally, I've always been very content with having a collection at my house that I maintain and that I breed and I sell, and that's pretty much that. I certainly align myself a bit more with Ozzy in that respect, where it's like you have your projects that you focus on, you don't go overboard, you have what you have, and you always work to build those projects and continue to build those projects. That is of more interest to me than building a shop, mostly because like you, as soon as you do that, your overhead skyrockets. Now you got to worry about keeping on the lights, the heat, the employees, if you're getting employees, like all that nonsense, man. I'm not trying to deal with that. That's a whole other level that's Kevin can keep.
Yeah, okay. I had to ask, man, because you soaking up some of the knowledge from one of the biggest in the game. So I had to ask, man.
Yeah.
You're like, no, I'm with Nerd. It's NRED till the day I die. You feel me?
Pretty much, man. Pretty much.
I love
I'm
that.
cool
That's
with
loyalty.
That.
That's loyalty, man. I love that. That's a good thing to have, man. Now,
yes, sir.
What with you being a breeder, what do you think is like one of the hardest parts of breeding that you've had to face?
So, for me personally, I tell this to people all the time, I like too much stuff when it comes to reptiles. Like I like way too much stuff, and I know enough people where I can get myself into some pretty bad situations when it comes to the number of animals that I have. So one of the trickiest things for me that I've always had to deal with is I'm a python guy and a colubrid guy. And working with those 2 families of snakes, one of the most difficult things is cooling down colubrids when you have them in the same room as pythons. So a lot of colubrid species, and not all of them, but a lot of them need that brumation period where they're getting down into the mid to high 50s, low 60s. You can't get pythons that cool. Most python species will not do well at all. They will just die. So that has always been a tricky thing for me. When I was still living with my folks trying to breed stuff, I would be, totally shutting off thermostats and barely able to get my colubrids into the 70s. because the rest of the room was so hot. So it took a lot of creative thinking to kind of make that stuff happen, as far as like, okay, well, I can take the colubrids out of this rack, I can put them in a different room, I could move the rack entirely into a different room, or I can give them typically a warmer basking spot than some people might do, and then totally shut off the heat. So even if they only get into the 70s, it's enough and a noticeable enough temp drop where they're still going to cycle normally. And that ended up being what worked the best for me. Was, if people, let's say, are going to keep like a California king snake, they might give it a hot spot of like 85, 86 degrees. I might push more, I might use back heat instead of belly heat, and then push for more like an 88 to 90 degree hot spot for a shorter period of time during the day. But then when I go to drop the temps and I'm totally taking the heat off the rack, there's an almost 20 degree difference now for that animal. And that was enough to stimulate breeding. And I never had any issues with poor fertility or anything like that. Not to say that if somebody else tried it, they would have the same results. But that was the trickiest thing for me to overcome, wanting to breed, just liking too much stuff and having to get creative with how to make it all work.
Okay. Now, I love that answer because you just gave me a lot of knowledge, man. And that's what this is about, man. Just learning. And I love that. You got a lot of knowledge, man. And I love that.
Yes, sir.
Now, with you being the manager at Nerd, I'm getting ready to give you an idea.
Okay.
This is because I'm a fan. And this is what the fans want to see.
Okay.
Now, Nerd primarily shoots their videos in the store. When can we get a Nerd herping video?
Oh, man. See, the problem with that is when Kevin wants to do stuff like that, it's spontaneous. It's out of nowhere. And he never tells anybody, including Donnie. And Donnie's the guy that's got to go film it. So if he doesn't tell anybody, we can't do nothing. That's part of the problem with working for somebody that's just all over the place, man, is like, he's like, oh, it'd be great to go find some wood turtles right now. It's perfect. And then he just goes away. And like, he's gone for hours. And we're like, what the heck? And then none of us know what's happening until he posts something on his Instagram story staring at a wood turtle. And we're like, oh, he went field herping. Okay. And doesn't say anything. Doesn't say anything to anybody. Yeah, it's also like I've wanted, one of my goals for 2020 that couldn't happen because of COVID, unfortunately, was every couple of months I wanted to take Kevin somewhere else, like somewhere outside of the building. I wanted him to go to Gatorland. I wanted him to go to Bar Checks. I wanted him to go to this place, go to that place. And COVID just shut that all down. And even though the world is slowly kind of opening back up, I still realize that he has an obligation as a business owner to be there and work to make sure everything's maintained. So that idea is just kind of taking the back burner a little bit. But hopefully before the end of this year, I can get him to go somewhere and we can get that on film. Because we film everything pretty much on location. At Nerd, but
everything,
which is cool, but it'd be cool to see that ponytail flying somewhere else.
Running to chase a python down there and jumping on it like, we caught it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I say that because I brung this guy on my channel, David's Feed. He's got like 160,000 subscribers on YouTube, and he's one of the biggest herpers in the world. Like, this guy is all over. He's in Thailand. He's Russia, Budapest. Is that a cobra? And he runs and he catches them. And I'm like, that is such an open market right now. If you really are trying to get more subscribers, go herping, and don't do it even where Nerd is. Go fly to Russia, and you're like, we're in Russia.
He said, go to the other side of the world.
Yeah.
Find one of them. Yeah.
We in Moscow, and we're looking for one of the biggest snakes in the world. That would get followers, man. You need to pass that idea on to them.
True. That is true.
Now, with you being the manager for Nerd, like, what are some of your goals? Like, where do you want to take Nerd in the next year or so?
That's actually a really good question, man. So uh, Kevin's been talking for a while, even before I came on as the manager, of kind of phasing out the pet store and turning the first floor of the building more into an educational zoo um, kind of place. And the reason for that is kind of twofold. One, just kind of being that um, brick and mortar pet shops, man, it's hard to run a pet shop these days. You know, you got Amazon, you got Chewy.com. You know, people can buy so many of their animal supplies from their couch, you know, sitting home in their living room, you know, so you've got to have something really special at your pet store to get people to come through. Even if, you know, like some people be like, oh, well, but you've got all that cool reptile stuff. Like you can buy the reptile stuff online too. You don't need to leave your house to buy anything, really. You know, you need cork bark. There's bulk cork bark suppliers out there. You know, like it is what it is. You know, so the other part of it too is because Kevin has such an eclectic taste in reptiles. You know, we don't just have ball pythons and retics and water monitors. We've got mangrove snakes. We've got a whole bunch of venomous species. We've got this. We've got that. We want to be able to showcase that because a lot of times those animals, they don't make it to the tour unless, you know, somebody asks to see them. But if we don't highlight it and you don't know we have it, you don't see it, you know. And so we want to kind of take advantage of that, you know, that we have so many different and unique species where it can get showed off. And we can be educating people about these reptiles, and some of these reptiles that, unless you know what to look for or unless you happen to stumble upon an image somewhere, you wouldn't even know existed.
Right. Well, I love that. That's the route that y'all want to go, man. That's an amazing vision, and I can't wait to see that. Now, speaking on Nerd, how does that feel? You know, when that camera shuts on and you know there's 200,000 eyeballs on you, man. How does that make you feel, man? When they start shooting and you just, it's like action, and you just know that it's 200,000 eyes on you, man.
Yeah, man. I don't even think about it like that, man, to be totally honest with you. And part of it, for me personally, part of it is like I'm a musician, you know. I've had the opportunity to play all over the country in front of, you know, a small crowd of 20 people to thousands of people, you know. So I don't necessarily ever really think about that. You know, I'm living in the moment. You know, I mean, for me, when it comes time to film for Nerd has this reputation of being the serious, hardcore reptile keeper, blah blah blah. Like, I love snakes and this is awesome, and I love that. Don't get me wrong, but I'm also at a point personally where it's like, yeah, man, I've kept reptiles for basically my entire life, and for me, it's fun. You know, like, of course, I love learning. I love gaining new experiences, but man, you know, I did this video at Nerd, and it has haunted me ever since. The ball pythons, ball pythons,
I've
ball
seen that. I've
pythons.
seen that.
That has haunted me everywhere I go. People see me and they're like, "You're the ball pythons guy," and I'm like, "Oh my god, yes, I'm the ball pythons guy." You know, but for me, I did that to be goofy. Like the story behind that was like, I was having a bad day, like not at work a bad day, just in general. I was just not having a great day. And Donnie was like, I need somebody with energy to give me like a 2-minute clip. And I was like, can I yell? Because I just want to yell. Like, I just need to yell. Right. He's like, yeah, man, do whatever you want. And I was like, perfect. Here we go. And that, you know, that's all that was dude, I mean, whatever, you know, but the ironic thing about it is after doing stuff like that, people would be like, oh, he's too silly, or he doesn't take this serious enough. And I'm like, dude, I was breeding species of snakes that, as a teenager, that I was watching people struggle to do as adults. Like, I'm just here to have fun, man. Like, I love these animals. I enjoy these animals. I'm in an amazing place, nerd who, I mean, Kevin, I consider Kevin not just obviously a boss, but a friend. Rob, I've known for ever. I mean, like, I'm around friends. I just want to have a good time, man. Like, you want to learn something, I'll teach you something. I'll give you advice on whatever I can. But man, I like to have a good time, dude.
That's what it's about.
It's dude, if you can't handle it, man, you can't handle the heat, get out of the desert, bro.
That's what it's about, man. I love that answer. Now, I have a question, and this is more so for me. I like everybody's catchphrases, and I'll tell you what I mean.
Okay.
Like Ozzy Boys has one. It's called he said shut up and breathe. And I love that. Balls to you, Gavin. He has, whenever he does a video, you see it, quality shines through. I love that. And I love yours. And I want to know, did you come up with it, or who came up with it? Y'all have these shirts and it says, our best friends are cold-blooded, I think.
Yeah,
did you come up with that shirt? Who came up with that catchphrase? I love that.
That's a Kevin thing, man. That was Kevin's design from years ago, dude. Like, that was his. All that was his. We just kind of rebranded it to give it a more modernized look, but all that was Kevin's.
Now what does it say again specifically?
It says right there, it says my best friends are cold-blooded, and then the back of the shirt, it doesn't say it on the new iteration, but the classic, the old school iteration, on the back, it says not for the squeamish.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. All right, well, we're almost done. I won't keep you too much longer. I have one more question, and then I normally do the hot seat.
Okay.
I put everybody in the hot seat, a couple questions. Now, before we do the hot seat, what's your dream snake? Something that you don't have in your collection right now that you are working towards getting?
Oh, man. There's a couple species.
Let us know.
There can never be just one for me. No, so I've been really lucky to get a collection of most of the species of snakes that I really enjoy working with. But there's 3 species right now that I have to get in the next couple of years.
Okay.
The first one that I know is going to happen this year, because I've got some friends that have some eggs cooking right now, and that's Macklot's pythons. I kept Macklots years ago. I actually traded my original pair to Brian Barczyk years ago. So he got those, and I regretted that ever since. And then you couldn't find them anywhere, and now I've got some friends that are breeding them. So it's I need those. So that's number one. The other 2 species, Bismarck ring pythons, they've kind of started to come back into the limelight. They're species that we years ago wrote off. They were $150. They were mean, wanted to bite you any chance they could. Nobody wanted to work with them. And they look amazing as babies and really dull out as adults. So people just kind of were like, meh. And then people stopped breeding them. They vanished. And now people are starting to breed them again, and their prices have skyrocketed. And for me, they're a species that always caught my attention, and I just never pulled the trigger.
Right.
And, when I wanted to pull the trigger, I couldn't find them. And now that I can find them, I'm like, okay, I got to get them.
Right.
And the last species is the rough scale python. And that's just because I'm a carpet python, Morelia python nerd. I love them so much. Rough scale pythons are absolutely phenomenal to me. I love just staring at them. Their eyes, they have these big, slate grayish blue eyes that every time I see them, I'm just like, So yeah, those 3 species are what has to happen for sure.
I love those answers. Now, what I want to get is you know what? My 2 dream snakes, because I don't have them. They're a little expensive. First would be a green tree python.
Mhm.
and then I want a copperhead.
Okay.
Once I get those two, I'll be happy.
All right. I dig it.
But I think I'm gonna wait till my son gets a little older before I do the copperhead. I don't know. I'm just kind of talking it over with my soon-to-be wife, and we've been talking about it. So I don't think she's too adverse to me having one because I have cages with locks, but we're still talking about it. So
For sure.
now, dun. Hey, we live, so I don't have a drum thing, but this is the drum set. Dun dun dun. Now this is the hot seat. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. This is the hot seat.
Okay.
So the first question I have is, why do you personally think the reptile bans are happening right now?
Oh boy. There's a lot that I can say about that. Obviously, Nerd is super vocal about US Arc, and I'm rocking the US Arc shirt today.
I love that.
You know, I don't want to go on a huge tangent about it, but keeping reptiles has always been a taboo. It's been a foreign thing to so many people. Even as the industry is growing at the rate that it is, it's still considered taboo. You keep reptiles. Think about everybody that that you personally know, and you tell them, "Yeah, I keep reptiles." Most of those people, if they didn't already know, would probably be like, "What?" You know what I mean? Like, it's just not a common thing. So it's really easy to get people on board with the idea of removing them from us because the vast majority of people only think they exist in the wild. The other aspect of this is animal rights organizations like the Humane Society of the United States, PETA, and a slew of others that are honestly on a whole anti-pet rally. Like, it's not just about reptiles. It's literally, they don't want you to keep anything. They don't want you to keep a dog. They don't want you to keep a cat. Like, they don't want you to keep anything. But think about an organization that puts out all these commercials, in the arms of the angel, and you see that cute little puppy dog that's like sad in the shelter. You can't then go and say, you can't own dogs. That would be terrible. That would be ludicrous for them to do. But it is easy for those same people that put out those cute, adorable puppy commercials to say, killer python in the Everglades is destroying natural habitat. They will eat your dogs. They're in your backyard. They're terrible. It's a lot easier to play that off. And especially when there are issues in places like Florida, it's very easy to do that. And the state governments watch each other. If one state passes a ban or a bill or a proposed piece of legislation, other states are going to follow suit. And the perfect example of that is Florida. Obviously, we lost the major deal with Florida, putting a bunch of big constrictors on the totally prohibited species list, so you cannot own them. And years ago, when Maine up here in New England was trying to pass a bunch of legislation, they directly cited that they were watching what Florida was doing.
Oh, wow.
Now, I can't think of two more different states when it comes to climate than Florida and Maine. Like, Florida and Maine. Think about that. Maine, cold as hell. It's very cold in Maine. Florida, cold in Florida is 50 degrees.
Right.
Cold in Maine is negative 20. So, like, why would Maine pay any attention to Florida? So it's really easy, and I'll end this whole thing with this final statement. It's really easy to make snakes and other reptiles seem to be the boogeyman. When you need something scary, big snakes especially are very easy to make seem like evil creatures.
Okay, that That's a great answer. I don't disagree with you. Now we're going to the second question.
All right.
Hot seat question number 2. What's your take on live feeding versus frozen thawed?
Feed what you got to feed, man. That's it, dude. I've done both. I do both. Some animals take live more readily than will take frozen thawed, and vice versa. What I don't condone is the glorification of feeding live animals. If you want to post a video of you feeding your snake a frozen thawed mouse, that's fine. The world doesn't need to watch an animal suffer, even though it's quote unquote natural. There's no reason for it, especially when we're under attack by places like PETA and the Humane Society, posting those kind of videos and like, oh, look at it, it's so cool, it's eating it. Like, it doesn't do anything good for us.
Okay, I just wanted to get your take on it. Okay,
yeah,
everybody's entitled to your opinion. I just wanted to hear yours, man. So
for sure,
great answer. And I tell anybody, I don't disagree with anybody. Do what you want, So
yep.
I love your opinion. Now, last question.
Mm-hmm.
This is the last hot seat question.
All right.
Everybody gets hate in the industry, whether it's Brian Barchat, Tyler Nolan, whether it's Nerd. My question is, how do you deal with the hate that you receive? You just kind of ignore it, tell them to screw off. How do you deal with the haters in the
industry? Oh boy, this is a loaded question. Another loaded question. You're asking some really good questions, man. When it comes to hate in the industry, man, I'll say this. Most of the time, the hate is coming from people who do nothing but watch a fraction of the content that you put out.
Okay.
So they just don't know what the hell's going on. So 9 times out of 10, just ignore it.
Okay.
Haters gonna hate. It just is what it is. If there's, I'll say, a valid discrepancy, or if maybe somebody with a really large audience is saying a bunch of stuff, and then we're getting kind of flooded with, oh, did you hear what so and so said? Did you hear what so and so said? We may address that, but it's honestly a lot easier to just have a conversation with somebody, or just ignore it.
That makes sense.
Sometimes we've put out some stuff that incites a little hatred. but you know what? But that was another prime example of, like, people missed the point. They wanted to pick and choose what they thought was being talked about, and they missed the bigger picture. There were conversations had with people directly, one-on-one, to diffuse any potential issues. And the rest of it was just people wanting to be dramatic and full of nonsense when they don't know what the hell is even going on, outside their own damn door, let alone what we're doing all the way up here in New Hampshire.
So I love that. So pretty much your answer is just, when you get hate, you just ignore it.
That's it, man.
That's some of the best advice in the game, man. I feel like everybody gets hate, so it is what it is. For sure. Now, before we end the show, I always say, let me see some fire, man. I don't know if you're home, but let me see some fire from that collection, man.
Oh, man. Okay. All right. Let's see. Hopefully my internet doesn't cut out, so bear with me for a second. I was in the living room. Okay. Let's see. What do you want to see?
Let me see. First, let me see, because I ain't gonna say get a carpet python, because mine is ridiculous to try and get out. Let me just see some of your favorites in your personal collection. Let me see some fire.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Where's she at? Hi, sweetie. We'll look at carpet pythons just because I like carpet pythons.
Oh, I love them.
So this is one of my Ocelot Jungle Jaguar carpets.
Ocelot Jungle Jaguar. She's gorgeous.
Thank you, man. I love this snake.
Now, if I was wanting to buy that, how much would that run me?
Depending. So Ocelot is a polygenic trait, which means there can be a low expression, there can be a crazy high expression. So the price is going to depend on that expression. I'd say anywhere from like $500 to $2,000, depending on the expression. So like I have another one here that's a much higher expression, and of course she's in shed. Hi,
Oh
sweetie.
yeah, let us see it. We need to see some fire.
So this is a much higher expression. Woo! I know. I'm sorry. I just freaked her out, but you can see that pattern is totally insane.
Gorgeous.
So
Gorgeous.
yeah, this is so that's a higher expression animal. That would be definitely on the pricier side. Let's see. All right. For all you ball python guys. Okay, let's see. Here's a champagne Enchi leopard het clown. Oops.
Gorgeous. Champagne Enchi leopard head clown. Gorgeous ball python.
Thank you, man. And he bred to a clown girl this season that just ovulated, so we should see some cool clown stuff.
Now I want to see in your collection personally.
Yeah.
What's the rarest snake you got? Your prized possession.
Oh boy. Okay, hang on. Give me 1 sec.
Let us see it.
Rarest. Oh man. You're making me think, dude. Man. Okay. All right. Let's see. It's not super rare, but it is one of my prized possessions. So, let's see. Where is he at? Right here. Hi, buddy. Oh, of course. And you're all ready to kill. That's wonderful. This is one of my red calico Amazon tree boas.
Red calico Amazon tree. She's gorgeous. I'm so jealous. Gorgeous name, man.
His name is Red Devil because he is full of hatred.
I will bite you in a heartbeat. Them Amazon tree boys don't play.
They don't play, man,
at all. Now, first off, because we're getting ready to end this, you gave me an amazing hour. First off, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you for hopping on with me, man.
Most definitely, man. Thank you for having me.
You're a legend in the game, man. I appreciate you, man. Before I end my interviews, I always shout out the people in my community. First off, if I forget anybody, it's still love, man. I love you, but we're gonna go down the list. Big Reese's Pythons, man. You my brother. Y'all go subscribe to him. My Animal House, Iron Dog, Fitz Family Constrictors, Ball Python Love, Cold Blooded, Not Lou, OSMR, Hill Jack. Let's go through some of them in the chat. Venom Wonderful, Moto Danger Zone, Patrick's Reptiles. It's just so many good people in my community. Y'all go check all of them out, man. J&G Reptiles, Not Lou, all of them. Great bunch of people, man. Y'all go check them out. Don't leave, because I have one more question for you.
For sure.
This has been an amazing interview, man. This is Big Reptile Talk. We was blessed today, man. We out. Peace.